Hi guys, and welcome to this video coaching all about overcoming relationship anxiety. This all started for me back in 2016 when I was just sick and tired of feeling on edge, worried, like something was wrong with me, sabotaging my relationships. And it started a journey for me where I wanted to change those patterns. I wanted to feel like myself, and I wanted to have and create a relationship that was right for me, that was filled with love and joy and passion, instead of feeling like I was getting it wrong or I wasn't good enough. And so that's kind of where this journey started for me, and how I ended up coaching this and becoming so passionate about it, because it was a big journey for myself. So I'm going to share with you what I learned and what will help you to be able to heal any relationship anxiety you may be experiencing, and to be able to create a beautiful love in your life. So I'm just going to share my screen with you now. So, overcoming relationship anxiety and finding the love that you want. And we're going to start by looking at what anxiety is and how it starts on a very basic level. Now, you might have heard this before, it might be totally new to you. That doesn't really matter. I do actually have a science degree, and we do go into a little bit of biology, but it's not really about that. It is really basic, and it's just helping you understand exactly what's going on in your body and how it began, like why you end up feeling this way. And then we're going to look at what you can actually do about it. And I'm going to give you steps to be able to overcome it and implement this so that you can change this experience. And we're going to look at how to find and create a deep, meaningful, loving connection and relationship in your life. And I'll also, within that, be talking about sort of how that works to create a healthy relationship, and kind of what you can do to be able to create and manifest that in your life. So the good thing to know is you're not on your own. Many people experience anxiety in relationships, but the shame stops us from talking about it. We might not necessarily, I know for myself, I didn't recognize it as anxiety for a long time. And so we kind of hide it away, and we kind of struggle without necessarily kind of healing it and looking at it and thinking about what's going on. So anxiety itself, or a relationship anxiety as well, is just it is just anxiety, but triggered and related to a certain area of your life, is basically the feeling and sensations of fear. So this might show up for you as feeling worried, on edge, sick, shaky, having panic attacks, or a racing heart. And they are all just very normal sensations of fear. Fear is an emotion, and it's driven by hormones in our body. So when you're feeling anxiety, your fear response is activated. But what's happening when you have anxiety is that it's without any real cause. You might be looking around and being like, well, I'm not being chased by a tiger right now, or I wasn't just in a car crash, so why am I feeling this fear? And then for relationship anxiety, of course, it's in the area of your life around love, romance, relationships, sex, etc. And what's actually happening is you've got elevated fear hormones. So the good thing about this is you're not going mental or crazy, and there might be different levels of this for different, for different ones, like different people that might be watching this. So it might have already spilled out into other areas of your life, or it might just be a little bit of worry in your relationships. Either way, it doesn't matter. It can be healed and overcome in the same way. And what's going on here is, because you've got elevated fear hormones, this affects you in two ways. It affects the way you think, and it affects your body. So this is where the worry, the overanalyzing, the fearful thoughts come from, the dark thoughts. And then it also gives you these physical sensations, of course, of maybe feeling shaky, having a racing heart, feeling sick, etc. Sometimes it can change your temperature and make you sort of have hot flushes, or get very cold and shaky. And it can affect everybody differently. It can even affect your bowel movements, and yeah, sort of why you're feeling sick. And it is actually a very normal thing for our body. It's just our fear response. And like I said, it's just driven by hormones such as adrenaline and the other fear hormones and other stress hormones. So let's have a look at why. You have had some past experiences of actual fear and stress. Now, you might not be able to necessarily remember what they were. It might have been a really long time ago, so you won't necessarily associate that with the feelings that you're feeling now. And so often these experiences are overlooked by us when we've developed anxiety because it feels like it comes out of nowhere. But it always starts with you going through a fearful, stressful experience, probably in a past relationship if you have a relationship anxiety, or with a parent when you were growing up, or somebody who was maybe meant to care for you, and then maybe you had a stressful experience with that as well. And what happens is, after this past experience, we all have creative minds. You might be a little bit more creative and sensitive than other people, and you have overthought and worried and basically kept that fear response activated over and over and over and over until eventually your body has got so used to thinking and feeling about the fearful event and the fearful things that it's kind of reset your fear hormones and your fear response to be pretty active and high all the time. So you didn't do it consciously. And like I said, it might have been a while ago. You might not associate it with that past experience, but it always starts with some sort of past experience. And often at the time as well, we numb out from the stress that we're feeling. So it might, if you look back and you might think, well, I handled that really well or whatever, but it doesn't mean to say that you weren't in fear at that time. Your fear response activated. And so with your creative mind, you then think about what happened and you play it over and over in your mind and your imagination. And when you do that, your body can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined, and it keeps those fear hormones activated in your body until eventually you end up with high level of fear hormones all the time. And this is what's playing out for you now in your relationships. So your brain then perceives a situation where it might happen again, or where you got hurt, that it might lead to that. And because you've already got the high hormones, it's already looking for that danger. And so it's going to find it really, really easily, even if it's not real and it's not actually going to happen. So a really good example is if you had an experience of somebody cheating on you, then when your partner goes out or does something without you, even though there is no suggestion that anybody was going to cheat, your body reacts as it did when you were cheated on because of the pain and the stress that you went through at the time. And the high hormones are constantly looking for evidence of what could go wrong. So let's have a look at how this cycle works. So it starts off with high fear hormones in your body, which are there because of the reasons I explained before. So because the high fear hormones are there, your brain is looking for the danger all the time. And what will happen is, because it's constantly on edge looking for the danger, it's not analyzing whether it's actually real danger or not. The fear is telling you you're in danger. So it often will perceive a false threat, or it could be anything. You might not even realize that you've had a thought or seen something that's triggered you, but it's because your brain is looking for the danger. This activates your fear response, which means you then have even more fear hormones flooding your body, which causes a reactive behavior or a panic attack. So your reactive behavior might be to fight your partner, it might be to cry, to hide, to avoid, to run away, and you're just feeling awful. Then often what happens is we judge ourselves for this reaction and this behavior, or for feeling this way when we know it's stupid, which causes us to feel more shame and fear, which keeps those fear hormones high. So it ends up becoming a cycle, but it's okay. Now you know about it, you know what it is. The good thing about that is you don't need to fear those hormones anymore. They are actually harmless. They're meant to be in our body for a survival mechanism. And like I said, I'm keeping this really, really brief for this video and simple. my brain loves simple. I do go into more detail on this on various programs and in other videos, but this is purposefully to help you understand and just have a little bit of background of what's actually going on to help you move forward from it. So what can we actually do about it? I'm going to go through 3 things today of how you can actually change this. So the first one is to bring the fear hormones down. So you're basically resetting your fear response back to normal. And we're going to go through that in a minute. The next thing is to change the story. So what I mean by this is we have our mindset or limiting beliefs, etc., that are running the show from those past experiences. And when you can change the perspective of those or the story, you're reducing the shame, and it makes it easier to bring those hormones down and to feel more loved and connected. And then finally, learn to love, respect, and value you. You might think that you already do that, but possibly underneath, you'll find out that there's another level of which you can do that, which will totally transform your relationships and bring more love and magic into your life. So let's look at number 1, bringing the fear hormones down and resetting your fear response back to normal. So this is, now you know that it's just elevated fear hormones, and they're not there because you're actually in danger or because your current partner is going to cheat on you or because of whatever you went through is going to happen again. It's likely that it's not, but because you've got the elevated fear hormones, you're feeling the fear like it's going to happen or like something terrible is going to happen, but it's actually not. It's just because you've practiced it and you've experienced it in your past that the hormones are there, so it feels real. But these fear hormones are not going to hurt you. They're actually harmless. You don't need to feel those sensations and that worry anymore. You don't need to fear it, sorry. The next thing to do is learn to reassure yourself. Often when we're in fear, we can get really needy and we can kind of cling to people around us who are there for us. But the problem with that is they can never do this for you, and they can never fully always be there for you because they have their own lives, etc., even if they want to be. So it's super, super important that you learn to reassure yourself, because ultimately you're the only person that can do that. And so an example of this would be when you're starting to feel the fear and fear the anxiety, you just say to yourself that this is just fear hormones, there's no real threat, and there's nothing that could happen that I can't handle, etc. And when you do this and you reassure yourself of why you're feeling the way you feel, that you're not in actual danger, you should feel the hormones level start to drop, and you should start to feel a little bit better and a little bit of relief. So the more you do this, keep doing it every time you feel it, you will stop practicing and training that fear response, and eventually those hormones will start to settle and come down to normal levels. So when you react because of the fear, don't forget that you will have reactive behavior. If you're like me, you will like cry and have panic attacks. You're going to have a reaction to it because your body literally thinks you're under threat. So when you react, however it is, maybe it's fighting or anger, or maybe you're more like me and you hide or whatever, it's super important to be compassionate and kind towards yourself because you're working on it and it takes time. Whereas if you get annoyed at yourself and you shame yourself for it, it only makes you feel worse and keeps the cycle going. The next thing you can do is say to yourself, right, what's the worst that can happen? So think about your triggers and things that give you the most anxiety and what those thoughts are telling you. Remember, it's not necessarily going to happen. It's just because of the elevated fear looking for the danger, and it's going to repeat what you might have experienced before or something similar. So when you say to yourself, what's the worst that could happen? So for me, I was terrified of rejection, right? So I'd be so scared that in my next relationship or in this new relationship or whatever, that I would be rejected and I would feel like there was something wrong with me and it was my fault. So because of that, in this scenario, I could say, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? The worst that could happen is that they leave me, right? Well, has that happened before? Yes. And did I survive? Yes. And can I get through it? Yes. And do I have enough friends and support and things around me? Will it hurt? Yes, of course. But will I get through it? Yeah, you can handle it. And so playing through what your brain is telling you could be the worst thing. You can actually teach yourself that, no, this isn't something to fear. I've got this. I know how to keep myself safe, etc. And then finally, when it comes to panic attacks, the best thing you can do is just let them happen, because what's actually happening is you have so much fear hormones in your body that it's too much for the body, and so it has to use it up. And so a panic attack is your body using it up. It's like vomiting it out. And so let this happen, because this uses up the excess adrenaline, and actually afterwards you'll feel better. Whereas what often we do is try and resist the panic attack, which makes us feel more worried and scared, which brings in more hormones and only makes it happen faster. So fear causes us to disconnect from another part of ourselves. And what happens when we are experiencing anxiety, because it feels like it's out of the blue, or like there isn't any real cause, we often get really annoyed at ourselves for it, shame ourselves for it, and that actually pushes away and disconnects a part of us that feels like it's trying to keep us safe, that's been hurt before and doesn't want to be hurt again. And so it's creating the fear to keep you safe so that you don't go into that situation again. And it's an ironic thing, because actually, obviously, the more you fear, the more you're not yourself, the more you push people away, and it's more likely to happen. So what if we can only feel connected to others when we are connected to ourselves? And this is what the next bit is all about. Connecting back to you and healing those baggage, that past, the stuff that's in the way, will help you eliminate the anxiety, but also feel so connected that you then create that connection, that love around you. So number 2, changing the story, which is basically reconnecting to yourself. So what happens is your brain creates a story based on your experiences. I'm just going to get my notes for this. So from the age of 0 to 7, we get heavily conditioned by our environment, and we take on stories and beliefs about our value and our safety and how we need to navigate to get our needs met. So we're all wired to get our emotional needs met as human beings. We feel like if we don't get our needs met, we won't survive. And so we learn how to get our needs met through our parents or guardians based on how they react to us and what's going on in our environment. And this causes us to create a story about how valuable we are, what makes us valuable, and how we get our needs met and how we are safe. So this isn't about throwing your parents or your guardians under the bus. It was all necessary, and everybody was doing the best they can with what they have. But what happens is we would then repeat these behaviors and these patterns, and we end up living by these stories in our relationships as adults. So we go for what's familiar. So a really good example of this is I was wired to get my emotional needs met by pleasing my mum, by taking responsibility to keep her happy. So then what did I do? I went into relationships where I was pleasing and lost myself in order to keep the peace and to keep them happy. Another example is if you've had an experience of rejection or abuse, you will unconsciously attract and go for people who will treat you in a familiar way. And so the key thing to know about this is that it is just a story, which has formed a belief for you, but it's not based in truth. It's just how you experience something. And even just me saying that now, you might be able to identify something for you. But an example of how we create this story in the example that I just used for myself was, if I learned that I got value and I got approval, and I got my needs met by pleasing my mum, then I created a story, something similar, like it's my job to make them happy. So that would be my story in my next relationship, and that would play out and lead to me feeling not good enough, not being true to myself, not showing my real self, and just doing things because I felt like that's what they wanted, which of course is never going to be enough. You know, you could try and please someone all you want, and unless they learn how to please themselves, it can never be enough. So you want to change it to a new story or a new perspective. So in that situation, my new story became, no, actually it's my job to make me happy, and it's your job to make you happy, and then we can meet in the middle. Because no matter how hard I try, it would never be enough for someone else, as an example. So we pick up these stories. What we're going to do is teach you how to change those stories and identify them. So your brain creates the story based on your past experiences, and then it lives out the story as if it's truth. So when you look at them with new eyes, from your wiser, older self, from a fresh perspective, it can create space for you to be able to choose a new story. So let's have a look at the first activity. So what you want to do is you're going to list some familiar or challenging experiences from your past relationships, or maybe childhood as well. And you're going to look at the list that you've made, and you're going to decide or think about what stories a part of me is made up as a result of these experiences. Or another way that you could ask yourself this is, what did these experiences mean to me at the time? And that will help you discover what your story is. A common one is around not being good enough. If you've been rejected in a past relationship, cheated on, hurt, then often it leads to feeling a part of us like it was our fault and we're not good enough. It's just a story. It's not true. If someone rejects you in your experience, then that's actually about them and not you. And I'll explain why. We cannot control how someone else experiences us. So when it appears that someone rejects you, what they're actually rejecting, or what they're actually walking away from or breaking up with, etc., is what you represent to them, which could be their own form of self-sabotage for their own relationship. So it's not actually about you. The same thing when it comes to cheating. When somebody has low self-confidence, or they fear that someone might reject them, often they will sabotage that themselves, and they'll cheat, or they'll avoid those emotions through something like that. So it's not actually about you. It's about what the situation in the relationship means to them. It's about what you represent to them and what their past baggage is. So all we can do is work on our own past baggage and learn to show up as us, and then the right person will recognize and value that too. But everything else is out of our control. But the key thing to remember when you're trying to change your story and you're looking at a fresh perspective is it's not about you. So the next activity, once you've identified what your story or your limiting belief might be, is to create a new one. So what you're going to do is actually move seats. So wherever you were sat to write down that activity or that action step, I want you to move. And then you're going to look at these stories with a curious new perspective. So obviously I'm going through this quite fast in this video for time. There is a workbook you can work through with all this information on, so that you don't have to keep pausing me and listening to the instructions again. So follow through that, and obviously pause me while you're doing the activities. But basically what it comes down to is looking at that fresh perspective and kind of trying to see, how is this necessary for me? What did I learn from this? Because it is from getting things wrong and being hurt that we learn how to value ourselves. We learn what's important to us. We learn what our patterns are. I wouldn't know that I had these patterns if I hadn't kept doing them over and over in my relationship, so I could see them. And then, because you are the creator of your own experiences, you're going to create a new story. So I'll give you an example of some new stories. Something that might be like, that was necessary for me to learn what I didn't want and what isn't okay with me. I bet you've had a couple of those experiences. Another new story might be, I had to lose myself to find myself. Another one might be just, I'm working on it. Or I'm valuable and worth loving. So when I can see that in myself, the right partner will also see it too. And I cannot control how others experience me. When I show up as me, magic happens. So create that new story, one that's going to work better for you, and have compassion for the old one and for the part of you that was acting that out and maybe developed fear disorder because of it. So next we're going to look at the final phase, which is learning to love, respect and value you, so you can find and create meaningful, lasting love. So the first one is self-acceptance. When I say self-acceptance, I don't mean that something you don't like, you're just going, okay, well, it's fine. It's not about that. It's not saying that doesn't matter or you don't want to change something. It's basically saying that it's human and it's okay. Because because that's the only way that you can move forward. So I'll give you an example of this. One of my reactive behaviors, because I was in fear, was to cry and get needy in my relationships, and I would then judge and blame and shame that part of me. And what I had to do to be able to heal was to accept that, not accept that it was okay behavior, but to accept that it came from a past experience and a part of me that was in fear, and it was trying to help me and protect me, and that it was human and it's okay, and I was working on it. And when you can do that, it helps you connect to that part and work with it so that you can create the change you want. Another really important thing that I see a lot is around our body shape or appearance. We heavily judge it, and we believe that if it was another way, it would be more lovable or something would be better. But that's not the way that it's going to be able to change. So when you can accept that it might not be perfect, it might not be what I want, but it's okay, I'm human. And to not heavily judge yourself and have compassion for yourself whilst you're working on changing it, then it makes it actually easier to create the change. You're creating the space. Become aware of your compliance or defiance, depending on how you're showing up in your relationships. So this is thinking about, is there a part of me that tries to become what I think they want from me instead of being true to myself? Or the reverse of defiance might be, is there a part of me trying to control them and their behavior so that I don't get hurt? Just to go back to the last one, actually, another thing I can say on this is that it's just familiar patterns that no longer serve you. It's how you got your emotional needs met when you were little, and it's just replaying out. And so just because it's familiar doesn't make it wrong. It just means that it's not working for you anymore, but it did work for you back then. And when we can turn things into the energy into it was necessary, we reduce the shame, which helps us move forward. So the next thing is to discover how to meet your own emotional needs more of the time. There's a whole lot of levels to this, but it's basically about, which is the next point, being able to validate yourself, inspire yourself, and nurture yourself. So self-care, what is your self-talk like? Are you kind? Are you inspiring to yourself? Do you validate and acknowledge yourself and your efforts? So we've got a little activity for you to do to help you with this one. So in your workbook, you will see there's a section where you can create 2 lists. So what you're going to do in the first list is to write down how right now you treat yourself. So I want you to think about how you treat yourself verbally, how you treat yourself physically, how you treat yourself emotionally, and how you treat yourself spiritually. And I just want you to jot that down. There might not be much to write, there might be lots to write. And then in the next list, you're going to have a think about, for all those areas, how you would like to, or what you could change that you think might help. So a really good example is validating yourself by just saying, thank you for showing up. I'm proud of you. I love you. And that's an example of verbal. Inspiring yourself verbally might look like, you've got this. I believe in you. Yeah. Nurturing yourself might be more physical. It might be eating well, exercising. It might be just giving yourself a hug. It might be whatever you want to do to nurture yourself. Emotionally, it might be just giving yourself space to feel and letting it be okay, and not judging those emotions or trying to find a better one. Spiritually, whether you believe in the universe, whether you feel connected, what that means to you, and maybe you could do more to personally develop or connect to that part of you. So have a think about that, and then from your new list, I want you to pick 2 that you're going to focus on to begin with. And then lastly on this, it's really important to just remember that your value is not determined by the opinions or actions of others or your relationship status, because often we've been conditioned and we've grown up believing that our value and our worth comes from outside of us. I'm valued because I have this, I'm valuable because I do that, or what I don't do, etc., or because I have this or I don't have that. And this was something I discovered in myself, where I felt like if I didn't have this ideal relationship, what was wrong with me? Maybe I didn't have as much value, which of course is just another story. Also, you might have been told by an ex-partner that you weren't good enough. You might have been verbally, emotionally, physically abused by somebody. And all that, again, sounds weird to say, is necessary for you to learn your value and to not let someone else the next time tell you your value. They don't know. They're only coming from their own experiences, which is their own baggage, and it's all about them and not about you. You're valuable because you're here. And so on that note, you yourself, just as you are, is enough. And the more that you can embrace and accept that, the more love and respect and compassion you're going to invite in from the right people, and the toxic ones will just melt away. And also you feel less affected by the ones that might have a negative opinion. And remember, it's about them. What someone else is judging in you is just what they judge in themselves. So on that note, this is kind of about reparenting. So when I say validate, inspire, and nurture yourself, and looking at that activity that we've just done, this is huge, and it goes way beyond what I can do in this one video. And if you want some more help from this, I have another video called Reparenting, which teaches you how to do this in a bit more detail. And obviously I can help you with that on my coaching programs or in a one-to-one as well. But if you think about this quote here from my coach, what if you inspire her to take action, validate and affirm her efforts, and have compassion when she gets it wrong? Now, this is just an example for a little girl. If you think about, if you're female, the little girl within you, it can be you inspire your inner child, or him, depending on what sits well with you. But this is about you treating yourself in this way and seeing what comes back from that and what can change for you when you do that. Very powerful. So next steps, if you feel like this benefited you, or you want to know more, you want to delve deeper, obviously there's only a certain level that we can do in a little video like this, and I didn't want to make it too long. This topic is vast, and there's lots of different things that you can do that can help you with to absolutely transform this area of your life. It's something that I could cry about. I'm so passionate about, because of how much my life has changed and transformed because of doing this work, and I'm working on myself in this way. So there's a couple of options right now. If you're feeling called, you want more, I have an anxiety to love coaching program, which is similar to what you've experienced a snippet of today, which really goes in depth and to help you deeply heal from all those wounds, those blocks, and those limiting beliefs, so that you can know yourself, love like yourself, and create magic and love in your life. We go obviously holding your hand through the process of healing and eliminating that anxiety, like I said, changing those limiting beliefs, and basically showing you how to manifest and create wonderful love in your life, whether that's with a current partner or whether you're single and it's a new relationship. Another option, if you're not really sure, is to book a free discovery call. Maybe this training's brought up some stuff for you. Maybe you're just intrigued to know more about how I work and how it might work for you. Let's have a call. I can help you with an individual challenge that might have come up for you, and you can find out if working with me is a right fit. And I would be absolutely honored to meet you. So thank you so much for watching this. If you do have any other questions or queries, please feel free to email me. I haven't actually put my email on there, so if you want to do either of those things, email me too. It's Aimee, AIMEE, at AimEelizabethCoaching.com, and that's spelled the same as it is in my logo there. Thank you guys, lots of love.